Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya naranchaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayet nashtaprayeshu badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate ruttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtihi shranvatah swakata krishna punyasravana kirtanaha hridyantastoya badhrani vidhunoti surutsatam. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome back for our regular daily Srimad Bhagavatam discussion. We are in Canto 3, Chapter 28, Kapila's instructions on the execution of devotional service, in the verse 12. We'll do the verse first. Yada manasvam virajam yogena susamahitam kastam bhagavato dhyayet svanasa gravalokanah. Yada manasvam virajam yogena susamahitam kastam bhagavato dhyayet svanasa gravalokanah. Synonyms: Yada, when; Manaha, the mind; Swam, own; Virajam, purified; Yogena, by yoga practice; Samahitam, controlled; Kastam, the plenary expansion; Bhagavataha, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead; Dhyayet, one should meditate upon; Svanasa Agra, the tip of one's nose; Avalokanaha, looking at. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: when the mind is perfectly purified by this practice of yoga, one should concentrate on the tip of the nose with half-closed eyes and see the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Once again, translation. When the mind is perfectly purified by this practice of yoga, one should concentrate on the tip of the nose with half-closed eyes and see the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. It is clearly mentioned here that one has to meditate upon the expansion of Vishnu. The word kastam refers to Paramatma, the expansion of Vishnu. Bhagavataha refers to Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Godhead is Krishna. From him comes the first expansion, Baladeva. And from Baladeva comes Sankarshana, Aniruddha, and many other forms, followed by Purusha avatars. As mentioned in the previous verses, Purusharchanam. This Purusha is represented as the Paramatma or Supersoul. A description of the Supersoul upon whom one must meditate will be given in the following verses. In this verse, it is clearly stated that one must meditate by fixing the vision on the tip of nose and concentrating one's mind on the kala or the plenary expansion of Vishnu. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So as Mohanlila Prabhu was also explaining, this the first this is the final section or the final verse in the section that Kapila Dev is instructing to Mother Devhuti on the process of Ashtanga Yoga, and then as Prabhupada is also explaining, from then on, from now on, for the subsequent 6 verses, he would be giving the description of the super soul, and then followed by that on how do we it's a very detailed description that he gives in the later verses of this chapter, where he says how do we focus our attention. Now that he's saying that the primary meditation needs to be on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the subsequent verses, then he's going to specify on how do we focus our attention on the toes of the form of the Lord. It's like a guided book for how do we take the darshan of the deities. So it's a wonderful description. So it's quite looking forward for hearing from all the devotees on that. So in this specific verse, there are two specific two kind of items that I wanted to discuss upon. One is, as Prabhupada is mentioning here, when the mind is perfectly purified by this practice of yoga. And again, this is, as we just mentioned, this is the sequence of verses that Kapila Dev is instructing. And when he means by this practice of yoga, he's mentioning the Ashtanga yoga. And when we refer to when most of our times when we refer to Ashtanga yoga, the default idea that might come to our head is usually the physical exercise part of it and other things. But what Kapila Dev, even in the previous verses and here is predominantly explaining is the Ashtanga yoga, which is intertwined with the concept of bhakti. And by performance of that Ashtanga yoga, what results is perfectly purified mind. And how does that happen? He also is also explained that in the previous verses, where he says the purified mind happens. So when we say purified mind, it could be, we might have our own definitions of what exactly does a purified mind mean. Is it some kind of, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati famously said, is it like taking a broomstick and then brooming the mind, or like so what is it? Is it taking a vacuum and then clearing off the entire dirt from the carpet of the mind, or what does a purified mind mean? So these are the specific definitions or the attributes of what a purified mind constitutes that Kapila Deva has instructed. He says a purified mind is blemish free, which means there are no unwanted thoughts or attachments that are there, dirt free, and it is crystal clear, and it is one pointed determination of performing the devotional service. So these are the attributes that he categorically attributes, saying that one who has achieved this is a purified mind. And in connection to that, when this point of concentrating on the tip of the nose that came, this is the famous verse that from Bhagavad Gita also, where Krishna also says in the 6th chapter, verse 13 and 14, where he says, how does like this is the whole sequence of verses where Krishna is explaining to Arjuna on the Dhyana Yoga. And through that sequence, one of the verses very famously we know is where Krishna is saying the yogi has to sit with erect neck, erect body, and then with half closed eyes, everything in a straight erect line. He says that, so the translation specifically says that one should hold one's body, neck and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. And here Prabhupada also, like in many of the purports to the Srimad Bhagavatam verse that we are we are discussing, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and especially Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and who was it, Vallabhacharya, they specifically call out saying that the reason the reason Kapiladev is saying a half closed eyes is because the devotees tend to fall into the trap of sleep. This is the kind of word that Vallabhacharya uses, where he says that if the devotee can kind of fall into sleep when even he's closing his eyes, and that's the specific reason that Kapiladev is mentioning that focusing on the tip of the nose should happen through with half closed eyes. And in here, in the Bhagavad Gita, this I'm correlating because in here, unlike what Kapiladev is explaining here, where he has specified that when the mind is perfectly purified by this practice of yoga, but in here, Krishna explains what does that actual the purified mind mean. The four attributes that Kapiladev has discussed in the previous verse. Krishna specifies that in this verse. He says, one should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. So, so if you want to kind of dwell on each of the things of what does unagitated mind mean, what is subdued, and why is even the divide of fear. Divide of fear again goes back to um, the point of the famous verse from Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vracha aham tvam sarva pabhyabhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha. So he's saying, do not fear. So this, I was also hearing Srila Prabhupada's lecture today, this morning. So Srila Prabhupada was saying that that's the final instruction of Bhagavad Gita, to kind of have so much of faith on Krishna that there is never an instance in our life where we fall prey to being victimized by fear, because there is so much of faith on Krishna, and Krishna is this Vibhu. So there is nothing that he cannot achieve. So that's the ultimate goal. So when this concept of when Krishna is saying here as of devoid of fear, in translation, that is kind of ultimately going to a point of such ultimate faith on Krishna, where there is this, we are never fearful and completely free from sex life. And Srila Prabhupada goes in detail on the sex life and how um, it is absolutely necessity of subsistence from sex. So he says here in one of the lines of purport, Prabhupada says, to realize this Vishnumurti within the heart, one has to observe complete abstinence from sex life. And like I think even in the past, when Kapiladev was discussing about one leaving home and then living alone in a secluded place, there has been multiple discussions that happened. Yamuna Jivan Prabhu was gave a wonderful class, and not able to remember the devotee's name, but Gopal Hari Prabhu's father, he, during that sequence, we were blessed to have him, and he amazingly explained what does it mean to be a Grihastha, and what is the prominence of how do we kind of look at all of this. So I'm not getting into that whole discussion, but I just wanted to kind of touch upon what Krishna is also saying here when on this specific thing of what does it mean to be a purified mind. And that purification of the mind happens through this practice of yoga, and that practice of yoga is nothing but performance of devotional service, because the chapter name itself says of instructions on execution of devotional service. And so anything so, and even going back to correlation of the initial question. So, if any time there might be a question of what is even Kapiladev is instructing here, he might be touching upon these various Ashtanga yogas and Yama, Niyama, and whatnot. But the the easiest point of even understanding why is Kapiladev explaining all of this is to go back to that one single question that Mother Devoti asked, where she said that, okay, I understand there are so many performances of devotional service that I can do, but please tell me what is the easiest and the best way that I can approach your lotus feet. And that is the one question that triggered this whole discussion that Kapila is explaining. So anything that Kapila is explaining can be correlated and understood from that one question of what Mother Devoti has asked. Whatever he's explaining is on that point of how can Mother Devoti perform the best devotional service that she can perform. And these are the sequence of verses sequence of chapters, not just verses that Kapila is explaining. So this Ashtanga Yoga is in correlation to that point of performance of devotional service through the Ashtanga Yoga. And then one might ask even a question of why do we even have to purify the mind for even meditation? Why can't it happen like so? What is the prominence of even mind being purified in order to kind of focus and meditate and concentrating on the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So for that, I wanted to kind of touch upon two verses. Those two verses are, one is appearance of the Lord from the Bhagavatam, where in the 10th canto, when we hear the sequence of verses when Krishna, even before his appearance in front of the eyes of Mother Devaki and Vasudeva, there are sequence of actions, there are sequence of events that happen before he kind of made himself visible in front of their eyes. So these are the verses that I just wanted to read the translation. It says, thus the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is from Canto 10, Chapter 2, verse 16 to 18 that we are reading. He says, thus the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the super soul of all living entities and who vanquishes all the fear of his devotees, entered the mind of Vasudeva in full opulence. And then, while carrying the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of his heart, Vasudeva bore the Lord's transcendently illuminating effulgence, and thus he became as bright as the sun. He was therefore very difficult to see or approach through sensory perception. Indeed, he was unapproachable and unperceivable even for such formidable men as Kamsa, and not only for Kamsa, but for all living entities. So Krishna has already appeared and is currently residing in the mind of Vasudeva. And he is and and um, yeah, we'll come to that point. And then the final verse, text 18. Thereafter, accompanied by the plenary expansions, the fully opulent Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is all auspicious for the entire universe, was transferred from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki. Devaki, having thus been initiated by Vasudeva, became beautiful by carrying Lord Krishna, the original consciousness for everyone, the cause of all causes, within the core of her heart, just as the east becomes beautiful by carrying the rising moon. So the prominence of purified mind is explained. I just wanted to kind of touch upon. Even when Krishna was appearing, Krishna could have chosen any way that he wanted to appear. There is no regulation per se of how Krishna needs to appear. Of Krishna could have just decided to just appear in front of Mother Devaki and Vasudeva, or he could have just entered the womb of Mother Devaki. But the first thing that he did was entering into the mind of Vasudeva, and that's where this whole idea of having a purified mind comes into picture. Because even when Krishna was appearing here, the first thing that he did, he first appeared in the mind of Vasudeva, and from the mind of Vasudeva, then he transferred himself into the mind of Mother Devaki, and from her mind, then he entered into her heart, and through her heart, then he entered into her womb, and after that, then he stayed there, and finally, when he felt it was the correct time to appear, that's when he made himself visible to their eyes in that famous form of Chaturbhuja Vishnu and the whole pastime that happened. And the second thing that I wanted to touch upon is one of the verses, a beautiful verse that Rupa Goswami has written. This is from the Vidagdha Madhava. I think, this was once, I first heard of this verse from none other than obviously Hariparshad Prabhu. He did one of the session on this I think in Naperville. where he spoke about appearance of Krishna and his holy name. So we'll just the verse. I'll just want to recite the verse and then we'll do the translation. The verse goes like this: Tunde tandi viniratim vitanute tundavali labdaye कर्णक्रोधकदम्भिनी घटयते कर्णाम्बुदेभ्यः स्पृहां चेथ प्राङ्गणसङ्गिनी विजयते सर्वेन्द्रियाणां कृतिं नो जाने जनिता कियाब्धिरमृतैः कृष्णेति वर्णद्वयी. The translation is, I do not know how much nectar the two syllables Krishna have produced. When the holy name of Krishna is chanted, where we are reciting, you can consider that as the process just correlating with the verse. When the holy name of Krishna is chanted, you can consider that as the execution of Ashtanga Yoga through the process of devotional service or a regular process of devotional service or just the chanting. It appears to dance within the mouth. So first of all, when we recite, the holy name first of all dances within the mouth. And then it completely occupies the mouth to the degree where Rupa Goswami says, we then desire many, many mouths, because holy name is now kind of, it's like Vamanadev. Once he has entered in, he was given the small place, and once he has occupied, then like he expanded himself into so much. I think it's the Matsya Avatar. He was given a small little bowl of water, and then he expanded himself, and then he was given a bigger one, and even then he just kept on increasing. So the holy name, when the holy name of Krishna is chanted, it appears to dance within the mouth. Then it expands himself. And then we then desire many, many mouths. And then when that name enters the holes of the ears, so after we are chanting, the sweetness then enters into our ears, then through the mouth, then once the holy name, him, has entered in our ears, then we then desire many millions of years. And then anywhere that he's going, he's just expanding himself, and then we are desiring more and more. And then, so from years, where does he enter? He enters into when the holy name dances in the courtyard of the heart, it conquers the activities of the mind. And therefore, all the senses become inert. So through years, the holy name goes into the heart, and during the whole process of entering into our heart, what the holy name is actually doing is completely active, conquering the activities of the mind, or in the language of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is speaking, and what Kapila Dev is speaking, is completely making the mind perfectly purified, or in the language of what Krishna is saying, is making the mind unagitated, subdued, devoid of fire, devoid of fear, and completely free from sex life. And in the language of Rupa Goswami, it means completely conquering the activities of the mind, where what eventually ends up happening is everything is just centered around the form of the Lord that we see in the heart. And that form of the Lord, and as Srila Prabhupada is also explaining in the purport, is when it says as kastam, as Srila Prabhupada is also explaining here, when he says the word kastam refers to Paramatma, the expansion of Vishnu. And some acharyas explain that that's the Paramatma, and some acharyas explain the word kastam, it refers to the place of the heart where once the mind and the place is purified, the form of the Lord reveals himself in the heart, like he did in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, where he has revealed, before even Dhruva Maharaj kind of opened his eyes and saw the Prishni Garbha in front of his eyes, the first form that was revealed to Dhruva Maharaj was within his heart. And he was able to, Krishna has revealed himself in his heart, because by that time Dhruv Maharaj was at this point of where his mind was perfectly purified. Again, Dhruv Maharaj is a classical example where he has performed what can be categorized as the Ashtanga Yoga, but that Ashtanga Yoga was so kind of was intertwined with the process of the devotional service. And the end, what happened when the mind is perfectly purified by this practice of yoga, what this kind of this translation now, when we think of, is like a classic um, one-liner of the entire pastime of Dhruv Maharaj, where by the practice of yoga, his mind became perfectly purified, and then in his core of heart, the form of the Lord was first revealed, and then when it was kind of taken away, he was so agitated, and then when he opened his eyes, that's where that same Krishna Garbha was standing in front of him, and then blessed him. So that entire thing. So it it's it so it's not only it so the reason I kind of wanted to touch upon this, the two syllables of Krishna, is not there is it's, as I kind of multiple times have repeated, these are the discussions that kind of predominantly focused and targeted towards me, where I kind of struggle a lot with just relishing or relating a lot to the holy name, and it just so happens that this is the verse I'm scheduled to speak. So it's I think it's kind of a lesson also for me on the kind of revelation that Srimad Bhagavatam and the two syllables Krishna are kind of revealing to me the sweetness of their names, and how sweet they are, that all we have to do is just chant the names of Krishna, and he takes care of the expansion of first entering into the mouth and expanding himself, where we desire millions of mouths, and then entering into the holes of ears, desiring many millions of ears, and through that entering into the courtyard of heart, where he can conquer the heart and conquer all of our lives, and through that process conquering the mind, and kind of directing what um, what wonderful service we could do. I kind of wanted to also maybe um, discuss something, but for lack of time, we will end it here in this beautiful note of the same verse of Rupa Goswami. We'll just read it once more, and then we'll call it. I do not know how much nectar the two syllables Krishna have produced. When the holy name of Krishna is chanted, it appears to dance within the mouth. We then desire many, many mouths. When that name enters the holes of the ears, we desire many millions of ears. And when the holy name dances in the courtyard of the heart, it conquers the activities of the mind, and therefore all the senses become inert. May we, in very near future, achieve that state of all of our senses becoming so inert through the holy names conquering our heart and the mind. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna. Sorry, it was quite unstructured, I think. But if there are any corrections or comments, otherwise, thank you, dear devotees. May we have a wonderful day of immersing ourselves in the holy names of Krishna and the thoughts. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.